Settle in and let your thoughts grow quiet as we drift into a gentle and unusual story called Good Fortune. It's a tale about two very different lives, one filled with endless work and worry, the other surrounded by comfort and success, and a small, well-meaning angel who believes he understands what truly matters. With a simple twist of fate, their worlds are quietly exchanged. What follows isn't chaos or excitement, but a slow unfolding of everyday moments, the kind that reveal what it really means to live, to struggle, and to find peace in unexpected places. Now, close your eyes and let the night carry you gently into dreams. High above the city, where the noise of traffic softened into a distant hum, Gabriel sat quietly on the edge of a tall building. From there, he could see everything: cars weaving through crowded streets, lights blinking in endless patterns, people rushing from one place to another. It was a world full of movement, and yet Gabriel's role in it was small. He was a guardian angel, but not the kind who handled grand or dramatic rescues. His job was simple, almost invisible. He watched over drivers, especially the ones who made dangerous choices. When someone glanced down at their phone while driving, Gabriel would appear in the back seat. With a gentle touch, he would guide them just enough to stop the car in time, avoiding an accident. The drivers never knew he was there. They only felt a sudden instinct, a moment of clarity. It wasn't a glorious duty, but it mattered. One afternoon, Gabriel found himself watching a man named Arch. Arch sat behind the wheel of an old car, his face tired and tense. His phone buzzed again and again with messages. Gabriel read them as they appeared: rejections, apologies, and short replies that all meant the same thing: no work today. Arch sighed heavily, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "I'm close to giving up," Arch muttered to himself. Gabriel felt something stir inside him. He had seen frustration before, but this felt different. This wasn't just a bad day. It was something deeper. When Arch glanced at his phone again while driving, Gabriel did what he always did. He appeared in the back seat and gently reached forward, touching Arch just enough to make him stop the car. The moment passed safely, like so many others. But this time, Gabriel didn't feel satisfied. He kept watching. Arch spent his day working small jobs through an app. His first task took him to a popular bakery, where a long line stretched down the street. He wasn't there to buy anything for himself. Someone had paid him to wait in line for them. So he waited. Minutes turned into hours. The sun shifted in the sky, and people grew restless. Finally, after nearly 2 hours, a worker stepped outside and announced that the bakery had run out of buns. The line groaned in disappointment. Arch quickly called his client, explaining the situation. He tried to stay polite, even hopeful. "They won't charge you," he said, "but I waited 2 hours, so I hope you won't cancel the task." There was a pause. Then the task was canceled anyway. Arch lowered his phone slowly, frustration washing over him. Nearby, he noticed a well-dressed man leaving the bakery with several boxes. It didn't take long to realize that the man had received special treatment. Investors, after all, didn't have to wait in line. Arch said nothing, but the look on his face said enough. His next job brought him to a house where he was supposed to do laundry. While he worked, a child watched him closely, asking question after question. "Why aren't you using your college degree?" the child asked. At first, Arch tried to ignore it. But the questions kept coming, each one sharper than the last. Eventually, he snapped. He began to rant. About work, about the future, about how things didn't turn out the way they were supposed to. His voice grew louder, his words heavier. The child fell silent. Later, Arch would receive a bad rating for that job. The rest of the day didn't improve much. He assembled furniture, restocked shelves, and rushed from one place to another. At one point, he returned to his car only to find a parking ticket waiting for him. Through it all, Gabriel watched. At a hardware store, during a short lunch break, a woman approached Arch. Her name was Elena. She spoke with energy and purpose, explaining that she was trying to organize a labor union to improve working conditions. "You deserve better," she told him. Arch shook his head. "I'm just a freelancer," he replied. "It won't change anything." Elena didn't argue harshly. She simply looked at him as if she believed he was wrong, but hoped he would realize it on his own. That evening, by chance, they met again at a small food stall. This time, they sat down together and shared a meal. The mood was lighter. Arch talked about his dream of becoming a documentarian, telling stories that mattered. Elena listened with genuine interest. For the first time that day, Arch smiled. Watching from a distance, Gabriel felt something new, relief, perhaps even happiness. It was a small moment, but it mattered. Later that night, Arch drove to a quiet parking lot and prepared to sleep in his car. When his phone rang, he answered quickly. It was his father. Arch straightened his voice, pretending everything was fine. He spoke as if he had an apartment, as if his life was stable. He even asked about his cousin's success, playing the part of someone who was doing just as well. When the call ended, the silence returned. Arch lay back in his seat and turned on a podcast to help him sleep. It started softly, but every few minutes, it was interrupted by advertisements. He couldn't afford to remove them. Gabriel remained nearby, watching quietly. For the first time, his simple task didn't feel like enough. He had stopped a car from crashing, but he hadn't stopped the quiet struggle inside Arch. And somehow that felt more important. The following day began much like the last. Arch woke up stiff and uncomfortable in the driver's seat of his car. The early morning light filtered through the windshield, and for a brief moment, he stayed still, as if pretending he didn't have to move. But the world didn't pause for long. Soon, he stretched, rubbed his eyes, and sat up. Another day, another set of small jobs. He drove to a nearby gym, one of the few places where he could shower without drawing too much attention. Inside, the air smelled faintly of soap and metal. People moved from machine to machine, focused on their routines. Arch kept to himself. While drying his hands, he noticed a familiar face. Leonard, a man he had seen a few times before. Leonard didn't seem to belong to the regular crowd either, but he carried himself with a calm, easygoing attitude. "Morning," Leonard said with a small smile. "Morning," Arch replied. They spoke briefly, exchanging a few casual words. It wasn't much, but it was something. One of the few moments in Arch's day that didn't feel rushed or pressured. Outside, the city was already busy. Arch checked his phone and opened the app that controlled most of his life. New tasks appeared on the screen, each one offering just enough money to keep going, but never enough to move forward. He accepted one, then another. Gabriel watched from a distance, as he always did. But now, his attention lingered longer than before. Arch wasn't just someone passing through his watch. He had become someone Gabriel thought about, even when nothing urgent was happening. As the day went on, Arch moved from job to job. At one house, he carefully assembled a desk, following instructions that seemed more complicated than necessary. At a store, he restocked shelves, lifting boxes and arranging items while customers walked past without noticing him. Time blurred together. Every task was completed quickly and efficiently, yet none of them seemed to bring Arch any closer to the life he wanted. At one point, he paused to check his earnings. The number on the screen was small, smaller than he had hoped. He let out a quiet sigh and kept going. High above, in a place far removed from the noise of the city, a group of guardian angels gathered. They met regularly to share their experiences and report on their duties. Gabriel stood among them, listening. One angel spoke about protecting people from natural disasters, guiding them away from danger before it struck. Another shared a story about saving someone from a fall, catching them at just the right moment. Then one angel, quieter than the rest, began to speak. His task was different. He worked with lost souls, people who had lost their sense of purpose, who struggled to find meaning in their lives. He described guiding one such person, helping them slowly rediscover hope. It took time, the angel said, but in the end, they found their way again. There was a warmth in his voice, a sense of fulfillment that the others seemed to recognize. Gabriel listened closely. Something about that story stayed with him. Felt important. More important than stopping cars for a moment and then moving on. When the meeting ended, Gabriel approached Martha, the angel in charge. "I want to do more," he said. "Something like that." Martha looked at him carefully. "It's not as simple as it sounds," she replied. "Helping lost souls is one of the hardest tasks there is." "I can try," Gabriel insisted. Martha shook her head gently. "You're not ready yet." Her answer was calm but firm. There was no anger in it, just certainty. Gabriel stepped back, disappointed but thoughtful. Meanwhile, Arch's day continued to unfold in quiet struggles. That evening, he returned to the parking lot where he often slept. As he settled into his car, a security guard approached, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. "You can't stay here," the guard said. Arch sat up quickly. "Just for tonight," he replied, trying to sound respectful. "I'll be gone early." The guard hesitated, studying him. After a moment, he nodded. "All right, but don't make it a habit." "Thank you," Arch said. The guard walked away, and the silence returned once more. Gabriel watched the exchange, noting how easily everything in Arch's life could be taken away. His place to sleep, his chances at work, even his sense of dignity. Days passed. One afternoon, Arch received a new task request. It came from a familiar name, Jeff, the wealthy man who had skipped the bakery line days earlier. This time, the job was to clean a garage. Arch accepted. When he arrived, the difference between their lives was impossible to ignore. The house was large and well kept, filled with things that Arch could hardly imagine owning. He focused on the job. Within a short time, the garage was spotless. Arch worked quickly, efficiently, just as he always did. Jeff seemed impressed. "Nice work," he said, handing Arch a snack. "I'll give you 5 stars." Arch nodded, surprised by the kindness. As Jeff casually mentioned his daily tasks, Arch noticed something strange. The list didn't include anything urgent or difficult. It was filled with small, almost trivial things. Planning a party, picking up items, even searching for something as unusual as a spiritual advisor. Arch hesitated, then spoke. "If you need help with all that, I could work as an assistant." Jeff considered it for a moment. "All right," he said. 1-week trial. It was a small opportunity, but for Arch it felt like something more. Over the next few days, Arch threw himself into the role. He solved problems quickly, found creative solutions, and stayed ready for anything Jeff needed. Whether it was organizing plans or handling unexpected issues, Arch adapted with ease. Jeff noticed. By the end of the week, the decision was simple. "You're hired," Jeff said. He even handed Arch a company credit card for expenses. For the first time in a long while, things began to change. Arch moved out of his car and into a modest motel. It wasn't much, but it was a real bed, a real roof, a place where he could rest without worrying about being asked to leave. That night, as Arch lay down, the room quiet around him, Gabriel watched from afar. Something had shifted, but whether it was the beginning of something better or just another step toward something uncertain, Gabriel couldn't yet tell. For the first time in a long while, Arch woke up in a real bed. The motel room was small, with plain walls and a quiet hum from the air conditioner, but to him it felt like a luxury. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the stillness settle in. No cramped seat, no early knock from a guard, no need to pretend, just rest. Across the city, Gabriel watched closely. He noticed the difference immediately, not just in Arch's surroundings, but in the way he moved, the way his shoulders seemed a little lighter. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was relief. Arch's days quickly filled with work again, but this time it was different. Instead of rushing between strangers' requests, he followed Jeff's schedule. And Jeff always had something going on. One morning, Arch was sent to organize decorations for a party. The next, he was tracking down a last-minute reservation at a popular restaurant. Another day, he was asked to find a spiritual guide. Though even Jeff didn't seem entirely sure what that meant, still Arch handled everything. If something went wrong, he fixed it. If something was missing, he found a replacement. He moved quickly, thought ahead, and made sure nothing fell apart. Jeff noticed. "You're good at this," Jeff said one afternoon, leaning back casually. "Honestly, better than most people I've hired." Arch gave a small nod. "Thanks." It wasn't a big moment, but it mattered. Someone had noticed his effort, and not just as a rating on an app, but as real work. Even Gabriel, watching from afar, felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. For once, things seemed to be going right. Days passed, and Arch began to settle into this new rhythm. He ate better, slept better, and even had time to think about something beyond the next task. One evening, Jeff approached him with a relaxed expression. "By the way," he said, "there's a gun in the house, just for emergencies." Arch blinked, surprised. Jeff shrugged. "It's locked in a drawer. I'll give you the password, just in case." Arch nodded slowly, unsure what to say. The information felt heavy, out of place in the otherwise casual tone of their conversation. Still, he accepted it. Life, it seemed, came with unexpected details, no matter how comfortable it looked from the outside. Later that day, Jeff noticed something else. "You've got a date, right?" he asked. Arch hesitated, then nodded. Jeff smiled and handed him a jacket. "Take this, and I know a place that's affordable." Affordable, of course, was a relative term. That evening, Arch met Elena at the restaurant. The lights were warm, the tables neatly arranged, and the atmosphere felt far more elegant than anything Arch was used to. Elena looked around, impressed. "This is nice," she said. Arch forced a small smile. "Yeah, it is." They sat down, and for a while, everything felt easy. They talked about their days, their plans, and the things they hoped for. Elena spoke about her efforts to organize workers, her determination to make things better. Arch listened. He admired her passion, even if he didn't fully believe in it. When the food arrived, it looked almost too perfect to eat. For a moment, Arch forgot about everything else. The cost, the expectations, the quiet pressure he carried. He just enjoyed the moment. Gabriel watched them, noticing how Arch's expression softened. There was something genuine there, something that hadn't been present during his long days of struggling alone. But the moment didn't last forever. When the bill arrived, Arch glanced at it, and his heart sank. The number was far higher than he expected. Elena reached for her wallet. "We can split it," she said. But Arch shook his head quickly. "No, it's fine. I'll cover it." He didn't want to look small. Not here. Not in front of her. so he used the company credit card. The next morning, the decision caught up with him. Jeff called him into the room holding the statement. "Hey," Jeff said, not angry, but clearly confused. "What's this charge?" Arch immediately apologized, explaining everything, the date, the misunderstanding, the cost. "I'll pay you back," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to." Jeff raised a hand, stopping him. There was a brief silence. Then Jeff spoke. "You're fired." The words landed harder than Arch expected. Just like that, everything changed again. The motel room, the steady work, the brief sense of stability. It all slipped away in an instant. Arch packed his things quietly. Gabriel watched, a growing unease settling in. He had seen setbacks before, but this felt sharper. Arch had only just begun to find his footing. Now he was falling again. Days passed and the situation worsened. Without access to steady work, Arch returned to the app, but the tasks were fewer and the pay was worse. Desperate, he made a difficult choice. He went to sell plasma. The process left him weak and dizzy. As he stepped outside, the world seemed to tilt slightly, and he had to steady himself against a wall. At the same time, in another part of the city, Jeff was going through a strange cleansing ritual, also feeling sick, though for entirely different reasons. Two very different lives, both uncomfortable in their own ways. That night, Arch wandered into a small restaurant, exhausted. He sat down, hoping to rest for a moment, but sleep came too quickly. A waiter approached and gently shook him. "You can't sleep here," he said. Arch nodded, apologizing, and stepped back outside. The air felt colder now. As he looked around, his heart dropped. His car was gone, it was towed. For a long moment, Arch just stood there, staring at the empty space where it had been. It was as if everything had been taken, piece by piece, until nothing remained. From above, Gabriel watched. This time, he didn't feel like an observer. He felt responsible. Arch wasn't just struggling, he was breaking. And for the first time, Gabriel made a decision that went beyond his simple duty. He would step in, not just to stop a car, but to try, in his own uncertain way, to save a life. The night felt heavier than usual. Arch stood on the sidewalk, staring at the empty space where his car had been. For a long moment, he didn't move. The city continued around him. Cars passing, people talking, lights flickering. But none of it seemed to reach him. He had lost everything again. No job, no money, no place to sleep. Not even the car that had once been his last bit of shelter. He let out a slow breath and sat down on the curb, resting his elbows on his knees. His thoughts circled endlessly, each one heavier than the last. "What's the point?" he whispered. That was the moment Gabriel chose to act. For the first time, he didn't remain unseen. A soft light appeared beside Arch, and Gabriel stepped forward, no longer hidden in the background of someone else's life. Arch froze. At first, he thought he was imagining things. But when he looked up and saw Gabriel standing there, calm, steady, and very real, his confusion quickly turned into alarm. "What? Who are you?" Arch asked, scrambling to his feet. Gabriel raised his hands slightly, trying to appear non-threatening. "My name is Gabriel," he said. "I've been watching over you." Arch blinked, shaking his head. No, this isn't real." "It is," Gabriel replied gently. "I know everything about you, Arch." That didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. Arch took a step back, his heart racing. "Stay away from me," he said. "I don't know what this is, but I don't want any part of it." Gabriel hesitated. This wasn't something he had done before. He wasn't trained for this kind of conversation, for this kind of moment. But he couldn't turn back now. "You're not alone," Gabriel said, "even if it feels like it." Arch let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Not alone," he repeated. "Look at me." Gabriel didn't argue. Instead, he reached out and gently touched Arch's shoulder. In an instant, everything changed. The city faded, replaced by a vision. Arch found himself standing in a different version of his life, a future that stretched forward like a quiet, unchanging road. He saw himself working long hours as a delivery driver, rushing from place to place, barely keeping up. Days blended together, each one as exhausting as the last. He saw Elena beside him, still kind, still supportive, but tired. They lived together in a small space, trying to make things work. Time passed. They moved to a new city, hoping for something better. They found steadier jobs, but the money was never enough. There was always something missing, always another problem waiting just around the corner. Then came a moment that hit harder than the rest. Their dog, sick, weak, in need of care they couldn't afford. Arch watched as the future version of himself made a quiet, painful decision. Letting go. The vision faded. Arch stumbled back into reality, breathing heavily. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Arch looked at Gabriel, his expression filled with frustration. "That's your idea of hope?" he said. "That's what I'm supposed to look forward to?" Gabriel frowned slightly. "I thought seeing the future might help you understand that there's still something worth living for." Arch shook his head. "That life is still terrible," he said. "It's just slightly less terrible." Gabriel didn't have an answer for that. He had stepped into a role he didn't fully understand, and now it showed. "I'm not used to this," Gabriel admitted. "I don't usually do this kind of work." Arch let out a tired sigh and sat back down. "Yeah, I can tell." For a moment they sat in silence. Then Arch spoke again. "If you really want to help," he said, "give me a life like his." Gabriel looked at him. "Whose?" Arch didn't hesitate. "Jeff's." The name hung in the air. Jeff. The man who never had to wait in line, who lived in a big house, who treated life like a series of small, manageable tasks. "That's what people want, right?" Arch continued. "Money, comfort, no constant struggle." Gabriel considered it. He had watched Jeff too. From the outside, his life seemed easy, even enviable. But something about it felt incomplete. Still, Gabriel was searching for a way to help, and this was the first clear request Arch had made. "All right," Gabriel said slowly. "If that's what you think will make you understand." Arch looked up, confused. "Understand what?" Gabriel didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached out again and placed a hand on Arch's shoulder. A soft light surrounded them, brighter than before. For a brief moment, everything disappeared. When Arch opened his eyes again, he was somewhere familiar, and yet completely different. He was sitting in a car, but not his car. This one was sleek, polished, and far more expensive than anything he had ever driven. The seats were comfortable, the dashboard glowing with soft lights. He looked down at himself. His clothes were different too, clean, well-fitted, nothing like the worn-out things he was used to. A knock on the window startled him. A security guard stood outside, but instead of suspicion, there was a polite smile. "Sir," the guard said, "are you all right? You must have dozed off." Sir Arch blinked. "Yes, I'm fine," he replied slowly. The guard nodded and stepped back. The car's system lit up, displaying a message. "Would you like to go home?" A map appeared on the screen showing a route. Arch hesitated for only a second. Then he pressed the button. As the car began to move, a strange realization settled in. This wasn't just a change in perspective. This was a different life. And somewhere, unseen but close, Gabriel watched carefully, waiting to see what Arch would discover in a world where everything seemed easy. The car moved smoothly through the city, almost as if it knew exactly where to go without effort. Arch sat quietly, his hands resting on the wheel, still trying to process what had just happened. Everything felt unreal. The streets were the same, the buildings unchanged, but the way people looked at him was different. Drivers gave him space. Pedestrians didn't rush past him. It was as if the world itself had softened. When the car finally pulled up to a large house, Arch stared. It was bigger than anything he had ever imagined living in. Clean lines, wide windows, and a quiet sense of luxury surrounded it. For a moment, he didn't move. He simply sat there, taking it all in. Then he stepped out. The front door opened before he could knock. Standing there was Jeff, but something about him was different. His posture was more relaxed, his expression more casual. "Hey," Jeff said. "You're back." Arch blinked. "Back?" he repeated. Jeff nodded. "Yeah, I finished everything on your list." "Your list?" The words didn't make sense at first. "Whose house is this?" Arch asked slowly. Jeff gave him a strange look. "Yours." The answer was simple. Too simple. Arch stepped inside, his eyes scanning the space. Every detail felt carefully placed. Furniture, decorations, even the lighting. Then he noticed something that made him stop. Photos. Pictures of himself. On the walls, on the shelves. Images of Arch, smiling confidently, dressed in expensive clothes, standing in places he had never been. Before he could say anything else, Gabriel appeared nearby. "You're living Jeff's life now," Gabriel explained. "For 1 week." Arch turned to him, still overwhelmed. "This is real?" he asked. "Yes," Gabriel said. "At the end of the week, I'll come back. Then we'll see what you've learned." Arch didn't fully understand what lesson he was supposed to learn. But in that moment, he didn't care. Because everything he had ever struggled with, money, stability, comfort, seemed to have disappeared overnight. And it felt good. Very good. The days that followed felt like a dream. Arch quickly adapted to his new life. He explored the house, tried different clothes, and got used to the idea that anything he wanted was within reach. If something broke, it was fixed immediately. If he wanted something, he bought it. There were no long lines, no rejected tasks, no worrying about the next meal. Jeff, now in Arch's old role, handled chores and errands without complaint. Arch gave instructions casually, sometimes without even thinking about them. "Take care of that. Pick this up. Handle it." And Jeff did. For the first time, Arch was on the other side of things. He didn't have to rush. He didn't have to struggle. Even his work felt easy. Meetings were short and relaxed. Decisions were simple: approve this, reject that. People listened when he spoke. They respected him even when he said very little. At night, he went to restaurants without checking prices. During the day, he drove wherever he wanted, without worrying about gas or parking tickets. It was everything he had once imagined. And more. Gabriel watched closely. At first, he expected Arch to notice something missing, to question the ease of it all. But that didn't happen. Instead, Arch embraced it completely. "This is what life should be," Arch said one afternoon, leaning back comfortably. Gabriel tilted his head slightly. "Is it?" he asked. Arch gestured around him. "No stress, no constant problems. If something goes wrong, you fix it. That's it." Gabriel didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. Days passed quickly. Then, one afternoon, Arch decided to visit Elena. When he found her, she didn't recognize him. Not as the man she had shared meals with, not as the person who had once listened to her dreams. To her, he was just another well-dressed stranger. But something about their conversation felt familiar. They talked easily, naturally, as if they had known each other before. Even if she didn't remember it. Soon Arch asked her out, and she said yes. That evening, they went to the same restaurant where they had once shared a meal in his old life. But this time, everything felt different. Arch didn't worry about the prices. He didn't hesitate when ordering. He didn't feel the quiet pressure that had once weighed on him. At the end of the meal, something unexpected happened. The waitress smiled. "Your dinner is on the house tonight," she said. Arch blinked in surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked. Of course. He didn't question it further. For him, it was just another moment where things worked out. After dinner, they walked outside together. The night air was calm, the city lights glowing softly around them. Elena smiled. "I had a really nice time," she said. "Me too," Arch replied. There was a brief pause. Then they leaned closer and kissed. From a distance, Gabriel watched, and for the first time he felt uncertain. This wasn't going the way he had expected. Arch wasn't learning a lesson. He was settling in, enjoying it, wanting it. At the end of the week, Gabriel finally appeared again. Arch was relaxed, confident, completely at ease in his new life. "So," Gabriel said, "are you ready to go back?" Arch didn't hesitate. No, the answer was immediate, firm. Gabriel studied him carefully. "You don't want your old life back at all?" Arch shook his head. "Why would I?" he asked. "Everything is better here." There was a brief silence. Then Arch frowned slightly. "Wait, you can't force me, right?" Gabriel hesitated. "I don't have that power," he admitted. "I can only change things back if you agree." Arch leaned back, relieved. "Then I'm staying." Gabriel didn't respond right away. For the first time since this began, the situation felt out of control. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. And somewhere deep down, Gabriel began to worry that instead of helping, he had made things far more complicated than he ever intended. Gabriel didn't answer right away. Arch's refusal hung in the air, simple and final. There was no hesitation in it, no doubt. He had found a life that felt easy, comfortable, and safe, and he wasn't willing to let it go. For a moment, Gabriel just stood there, thinking. "I need to report this," he said at last. Arch shrugged. "Do whatever you want," he replied. "I'm not going back." That night, Gabriel returned to the place where the angels gathered. The atmosphere felt different this time, heavier, more serious. When he explained what he had done, Martha reacted immediately. "You did what?" she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. Gabriel tried to explain his reasoning, how Arch was struggling, how he thought showing him another life might help. Martha didn't look convinced. "You interfered in a way you weren't authorized to," she said. "And worse, you chose the wrong person to help." Gabriel frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your assignment wasn't Arch," Martha replied. "It was Elena." The realization hit him all at once. He had been so focused on Arch's visible struggles that he hadn't considered anyone else. "You need to fix this," Martha continued. "Convince him to return to his life." Gabriel hesitated. "I can try," he said. "But I already told him. I can't force him." Martha's expression hardened. "Then you'll have to find another way." There was a brief pause. Then, as punishment, Martha stepped forward and removed Gabriel's wings. The change was immediate. Gabriel staggered slightly, as if something essential had been taken from him, because it had. "You'll remain like this until you fix what you've done," Martha said. "Now go." Back in the human world, things were unfolding quickly. Arch had decided to celebrate. A large pool party filled the house with music, laughter, and people who seemed happy to be there. Everything was bright, lively, and effortless. From the outside, it looked perfect. Gabriel arrived quietly, still adjusting to his new, unfamiliar state. Without his wings, everything felt heavier. His movements, his thoughts, even the air around him. He found Arch near the pool. "This isn't right," Gabriel said. Arch glanced at him. It feels right, he replied. Gabriel shook his head. What about Jeff? He asked. This is his life. Arch waved a hand dismissively. He'll be fine. Gabriel didn't argue further. Instead, he stepped forward and reached out, touching Jeff. In an instant, everything changed. Jeff froze. Then his eyes widened as memories rushed back. His life, his home, everything that had been taken from him. For a few seconds, he stood there in shock. Then he fainted. The music stopped. Guests looked around in confusion. Someone shouted. Within moments, the lively party began to fall apart as people quickly gathered their things and left. The house grew quiet again. Jeff slowly came to, sitting up and looking around with a mixture of anger and disbelief. My house, he said. He turned to Arch. My life. Arch stepped back slightly. It's temporary, he said. Jeff shook his head. No, this isn't temporary. That's mine. Gabriel stepped between them. He won't remember any of this once things are restored, Gabriel explained. This is Arch's experience. Jeff barely listened. I want it back, he said firmly. Then he made an offer. I'll pay you, Jeff said, turning to Arch, 200,000. Just give it back. Arch stared at him. That's nothing to you, he replied. You spend that on a watch. The tension rose quickly. You think this is easy? Jeff shot back. You think this life just appeared out of nowhere? I know it didn't come from me, Arch said. The argument grew louder, sharper. Finally, Gabriel raised his voice. Enough. Both men fell silent. We can't solve this like this, Gabriel said. There has to be an agreement. After a long pause, Arch spoke again. I'll switch back, he said. But not yet. Jeff frowned. What do you mean? A few more days, Arch said. That's all I want. Jeff hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Fine. The agreement was made. But it didn't make things easier. With Gabriel now unable to return to his former place, he needed somewhere to stay. Jeff, now living in Arch's position, had little to offer, but he still agreed. They ended up in a small motel room. 1 bed, 2 people. It wasn't comfortable. That night, Jeff lay awake, staring at the ceiling. So, you're really an angel? He asked. Gabriel nodded slightly. Was, he corrected. Jeff turned his head. What happened to your wings? I lost them, Gabriel said simply. There was a pause. Do you get them back? I don't know. The room fell quiet again. The next morning, reality began to settle in. The motel manager knocked on the door, reminding them that payment was due. Jeff tried to negotiate, promising he would have the money by evening. It was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. With no other options, Jeff opened the same kind of app Arch had once relied on. Delivery requests, small payments, constant pressure. Gabriel followed him as he accepted his first job. First, Jeff approached it with confidence. How hard can it be? He muttered. It didn't take long to find out. Customers were impatient. Some were rude. Others blamed him for things beyond his control. Wrong orders, delays, missing items. Traffic was chaotic, and other drivers showed little patience. Jeff rushed from one delivery to the next, his earlier confidence fading with each passing hour. By the end of the day, he was exhausted. This is impossible, he said, slumping into the driver's seat. Gabriel watched quietly. For the first time, Jeff was seeing what Arch had lived through every day. And it wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. It was relentless. To make things worse, Jeff discovered that the app wouldn't pay him immediately. The earnings would come at the end of the week, which meant they still couldn't afford the motel. That night, they had no choice. They slept in the car. the same car Arch had once called home. Meanwhile, Arch continued living in comfort. But not everything was as easy as it seemed. One evening, he invited Elena to join him on a trip to Paris. She listened, then shook her head. "I can't," she said. "Why not?" Arch asked. "I have work to do," she replied. "The union." Arch frowned. "That can wait." Elena's expression changed. "No, it can't." She looked at him carefully. "You might have money," she said, "but I still have to fight for my life to be better." Arch didn't respond. He didn't know how to. "You don't understand," she added softly. Then she turned and walked away. For the first time since the change, something in Arch's perfect world didn't go his way, and it stayed with him. Later that night, alone in his car, Arch drove through the city, his thoughts restless. His phone buzzed. Without thinking, he glanced down to read the message. Just for a second. It was enough. The car drifted. A sudden impact. Then darkness. When news of the accident reached Gabriel, he felt a sharp sense of dread. "What happened?" Jeff asked. Gabriel looked at him, his voice quiet. "He's in a coma." The words settled heavily between them. Jeff stared, stunned. "Then we can't switch back?" he asked. Gabriel shook his head. "No, not unless he agrees." For the first time, both of them understood. This situation wasn't just complicated anymore. It was out of control, and now they would have to live with the consequences. The days that followed felt longer than anything Jeff had ever experienced. Sleeping in the car had been uncomfortable, but waking up to the same reality, no money, no stability, no easy way out, was even worse. The world he had once controlled with a few decisions now moved without him, indifferent and unwelcoming. Beside him, Gabriel sat quietly, still adjusting to life without his wings. He looked different now, less certain, more human. "We need a plan," Jeff said, rubbing his face. Gabriel nodded. "Yes," but neither of them knew where to start. That morning, Jeff had an idea. If he couldn't rely on quick money, maybe he could rely on something else, his experience. "I built companies," Jeff said. "I can still think. I can still solve problems." Gabriel looked at him. "Then try." So Jeff did. He went to one of his own companies, a place where he had once been welcomed without question. But now, dressed simply and carrying none of his former presence, he was just another stranger. "I have ideas," Jeff told the receptionist. "Important ones." She gave him a polite but distant smile. "You can send them by email." "I can't," Jeff insisted. "I need to speak to someone." But no one came. Eventually, security escorted him out. Jeff stood outside the building, staring at the doors as they closed behind him. For the first time, he understood something he had never noticed before. Without status, without recognition, even the best ideas could go unheard. Days turned into weeks. Jeff applied for job after job, filling out forms, sending messages, waiting for responses that never came. Each rejection, or worse, each silence, chipped away at his confidence. 3 weeks passed. Not a single call back. Meanwhile, Gabriel was facing his own challenges. Without his angelic nature, he began to experience things he had only observed before. Hunger, fatigue, discomfort, even small sensations felt new and overwhelming. Jeff eventually pushed him to find work. "You can't just sit around," Jeff said. "We both need to earn something." Gabriel agreed. Before long, he found himself working in a restaurant kitchen, washing dishes. The work was repetitive and tiring. His hands stayed wet for hours, and the noise of clattering plates never seemed to stop. When he received his first paycheck, he stared at it in confusion. "This is it?" he asked. A coworker named Felipe nodded. "After taxes," Felipe said. Gabriel frowned. "But it's not enough." Felipe gave a small, tired smile. That's why I have 3 jobs. Gabriel blinked. 3. Felipe nodded again. No time to think about it. Just keep going. Gabriel looked down at the paycheck again, trying to understand how anyone could live like this, working constantly and still struggling to get by. At the hospital, Arch finally woke up. The room was quiet, filled with soft beeping sounds from nearby machines. A nurse stood beside him, checking his condition. "You're awake," she said gently. Arch blinked, his vision slowly clearing. "What happened?" he asked. "You were in an accident," the nurse explained. "But you're going to be all right." Arch listened carefully, his mind already moving ahead. "Did anyone visit me?" he asked. The nurse nodded. "Yes, 2 men. They seemed concerned." Arch didn't say anything, but he understood. Later, when he was alone, he made a decision. When Jeff eventually arrived for a delivery at the house, his face lit up with hope. "He's awake," Jeff told Gabriel earlier. "We can fix this." But when Jeff stood in front of Arch, something unexpected happened. Arch looked at him with confusion. "I'm sorry," Arch said. "Do I know you?" Jeff froze. "What?" The words didn't make sense. I think I have some memory loss," Arch continued. "From the accident." He even handed Jeff a small pamphlet explaining symptoms of memory loss. Jeff stared at him, uncertain. Was this real, or was Arch pretending? That night, Jeff shared the news with Gabriel. "He doesn't remember anything," Jeff said. Gabriel frowned. Something didn't feel right, but before they could figure it out, Jeff pressed on. "We need help," he said. "Someone who knows what they're doing." So Gabriel returned to Martha. He explained everything, the accident, the coma, the complications that followed. Martha listened, her expression serious. "This has gone too far," she said. Gabriel waited, hoping for guidance. Instead, Martha made another decision. "You're no longer an angel." The words hit harder than before. Gabriel felt the change immediately. His connection to the unseen world faded completely. His senses shifted, grounding him fully in the human experience. "You'll remain human," Martha continued, "unless Arch truly chooses to restore things." Gabriel stood still, trying to process it. Then Martha disappeared. Back in the city, Jeff tried to help Gabriel adjust. He brought him to a fast food restaurant, hoping to at least give him a proper meal. Gabriel sat at the table, staring at the food in front of him. "How do I know when to stop chewing?" he asked. Jeff almost laughed, but stopped himself. "Just when it feels right," he said. Gabriel took a bite, then another. His eyes widened. "It's amazing," he said. The flavors, the textures, everything was new. For a brief moment, despite everything that had gone wrong, he felt something close to joy. But it didn't last. "I'm scared," Gabriel admitted quietly. Jeff leaned back. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." The next day, Jeff tried again to find a way forward. But the system didn't bend easily. Without money, without connections, every path felt blocked. Meanwhile, Gabriel struggled to understand how humans lived like this every day, working constantly, worrying constantly, yet still finding ways to keep going. At the same time, Arch continued his act. He maintained the story of memory loss, avoiding any conversation that might reveal the truth. He had seen enough to know what his old life meant, and he wasn't ready to return to it. But even as he pretended, something inside him had begun to shift, because deep down he remembered everything. And the longer he held onto this new life, the harder it became to ignore what it had cost. Days passed, but nothing felt stable. Jeff and Gabriel continued struggling through a life neither of them had been prepared for. Each day brought new problems, and each solution seemed to lead to another obstacle. One afternoon, Jeff's phone buzzed. It was a message from the delivery app. He opened it, hoping for something good, maybe a bonus, maybe a new opportunity. Instead, he read the words slowly, his expression tightening. Due to system updates, deliveries will now be handled primarily by automated services. Your account no longer meets our requirements. Jeff stared at the screen. They're replacing me, he said quietly. Gabriel looked at him. With machines. Jeff nodded. I can't even do this anymore. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jeff let out a frustrated breath, his voice rising. How does anyone live like this? He said. No stability, no fairness, just constant pressure. Gabriel didn't interrupt. He understood now, not just in theory but through experience. That same day, things got worse. As Jeff stepped away from the car, still lost in thought, flashing lights appeared behind him. A police officer approached. Unpaid tickets, the officer explained. Before Jeff could argue, the car was towed. He stood there, watching it disappear the same way Arch once had. Only now, he understood exactly what that meant. Meanwhile, in the large house across the city, Arch's life looked perfect on the surface. He had everything: comfort, space, freedom. But something felt off. That evening, he hosted a birthday party. Guests filled the house again, laughing, talking, enjoying themselves. Music played, drinks flowed, and everything looked exactly the way it should. Arch even danced, copying a routine he had seen before, Jeff's routine. From the outside, it was flawless, but inside, something felt hollow. As the party continued, Arch stepped out onto the balcony for a moment of quiet. There, he found someone unexpected. Leonard. Leonard stood beside him, no longer looking worn down or overlooked. He was dressed well, comfortable in this environment. Arch blinked. You look different, Arch said. Leonard smiled. So do you. They stood side by side, looking out over the city. After a moment, Arch spoke. Elena doesn't want me, he said. Not like this. Leonard nodded slowly. Maybe it's not about the money, he said. Arch frowned. Then what is it about? Leonard glanced at him. Most people up here, he said, gesturing toward the house, got what they have by taking from others. They don't even think about it. Arch stayed quiet. But you're different, Leonard continued. You helped me. You didn't have to. But you did. Arch looked down. I didn't earn any of this, he admitted. Leonard shrugged. Maybe not, he said. But what you do with it, that's still your choice. The words stayed with Arch. Inside the house, the party continued. Gabriel, still adjusting to human life, moved through the crowd curiously. He picked up a piece of chocolate from a table and ate it without thinking. A few minutes later, he began to feel strange. The room seemed brighter, the music louder, his thoughts lighter. He started talking to a stranger nearby, laughing without fully understanding why. Then, just as suddenly, everything faded. He sat down, his head spinning, and soon fell asleep. The party carried on without him. Later, as the guests began to leave, Arch found Elena working among the catering staff. She didn't look at him the way she once had. I need to talk to you, Arch said. I'm working, Elena replied. Just for a minute. She hesitated, then agreed. They moved to the side, away from the noise. I thought about what you said, Arch began. About Paris. About everything. Elena crossed her arms slightly. And I still want you to come with me, Arch said. Elena shook her head. I lost my apartment, she said. I'm staying in my cousin's car now. Arch blinked. What? But I'm still not going, she continued, because this isn't just about me. Things are bad for a lot of people, and I can't just walk away from that. Arch didn't know what to say. For the first time, his wealth didn't give him an answer. After the party ended, the house grew quiet. That was when Jeff returned. He moved carefully, staying out of sight as he entered. He knew the house well, every hallway, every room. He went straight to a drawer. The password hadn't changed. Inside were several expensive watches. Jeff picked them up quickly. This was his chance to get something back. But as he turned to leave, he heard a voice. "Stop!" Arch stood in the doorway. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then everything happened at once. Arch panicked. Without thinking, he reached for the gun Jeff had once shown him. A loud sound echoed through the room. Jeff cried out, dropping the watches as he clutched his arm. The bullet hadn't been fatal, but it was enough. Arch rushed forward immediately. "I didn't mean," he said. "You told me. This is what it's for." Jeff looked at him, pain mixed with realization. "You remember everything," he said. Arch froze. The truth was out. The next day they were at the hospital. Jeff's arm was treated, wrapped carefully. Arch stood nearby, quiet and uneasy. "I'm sorry," he said. Jeff didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at Gabriel. "Fix it," Jeff said. "Tell him to fix it." Gabriel shook his head. "It doesn't work like that," he said. Arch frowned. "What do you mean?" "If you truly wanted to go back," Gabriel explained, "it would have already happened." Arch looked confused. "But I said I would." Gabriel met his eyes. "You said it because you feel guilty," he said. "Not because you believe your life is worth living." The words were difficult but honest. Jeff sighed. "Of course he doesn't want to go back," he said. "Who would choose that?" Silence followed. Then Arch spoke again. "Stay here," he said. "Both of you." Jeff and Gabriel looked at him. "Until we figure this out," Arch continued. It wasn't a solution, but it was something. Days passed. For a while, the three of them shared the same space, talking, arguing, even laughing at times. The tension didn't disappear, but it softened. Then one day, Martha appeared again. She looked at Gabriel. "I came to check on you," she said. Gabriel stepped forward. "I don't understand," he admitted. "How am I supposed to give people hope when their lives are this hard?" Martha studied him. "A lost soul doesn't need an angel," she said. "They need another person." Gabriel frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Martha didn't explain further. She simply disappeared. The words lingered. Later, the three of them went out together. At a small taco stand, Arch spotted Elena again. She was with her co-workers, talking about trying once more to organize a union. "It didn't work last time," someone said. Elena nodded. "Then we try again," she replied. "Change doesn't happen overnight." Gabriel listened carefully. There was something in her words, something steady, something real. Afterward, they all went to a club. Music filled the space, and for a while, everything felt lighter. People danced, laughed, moved freely. But Gabriel eventually stepped outside, sitting alone. He looked up at the sky. "I failed," he said quietly. A moment later, Arch joined him. "You didn't," Arch said. Gabriel shook his head. "I was supposed to help," he said. "But I made everything worse." Arch sat beside him. "I gave up too," he admitted. "So maybe we're the same." Gabriel looked at him. "No future, no place to belong," he said. Arch thought for a moment. Then he spoke. "But there were good things too," he said. "Food, music, people." Gabriel nodded slowly. "And friends," he added. Arch smiled faintly. "All the people I know here," he said, "they don't really care about me." He looked down. "But my family does." There was a quiet pause. Then Arch took a deep breath. "I don't want this life anymore," he said. "Not like this." Gabriel watched him carefully. "I want something real," Arch continued. "Something I build myself. That was the moment. Gabriel smiled. For the first time in a long while, he understood what he was supposed to do. He reached out and gently touched Arch's shoulder. And everything changed. The world shifted in an instant. The lights, the music, the noise of the city. All of it faded into something softer, quieter. For a brief moment, Arch felt weightless, as if everything around him had been lifted away. Then he blinked. He was back. The cold night air brushed against his face. The street was dim, the sounds of distant traffic echoing faintly. In front of him stood a familiar restaurant, the same place where everything had once started to fall apart. For a second, he didn't move. Then he looked down. No expensive clothes, no polished shoes, just the same worn outfit he had before. His heart beat a little faster. "It's back," he whispered. Across the street, a worker from the restaurant noticed him standing there. After a moment of hesitation, the man walked over. "Hey," he said kindly. "You all right?" Arch nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think so." The worker glanced around, then back at him. "If you need a ride somewhere," he offered, "I can help." Arch hesitated. Just days ago, or what felt like days, he had everything. A house, money, comfort. Now he was back where he started. But something felt different. "Thank you," Arch said, and this time he meant it. Meanwhile, in the large house, silence filled the space where laughter and music had once been. Jeff stood alone in the living room. Everything was back to normal. The furniture, the decorations, the quiet order of his life. It had all returned. But it didn't feel the same. Jeff walked slowly through the house, his footsteps echoing faintly. He paused near a table, picking up a stack of papers. Parking tickets. Old ones. He looked at them carefully. For the first time, he didn't see them as minor inconveniences. He saw them as something else, small problems that, for someone else, could become overwhelming. Without hesitation, he picked up his phone. "Take care of these," he said. There was no frustration in his voice, just a quiet decision. Across the city, Arch stood beside his car, finally retrieved, finally back in his hands. But before doing anything else, he made a call. His father answered almost immediately. "Hey," Arch said. There was a brief pause. Then, instead of pretending, he told the truth. About everything. The struggles. The car. The nights in the parking lot. For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then his father spoke, calm and steady. "You should have told me sooner," he said. "But it's okay. We'll figure it out." Arch closed his eyes briefly. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he had to carry everything alone. "And your cousin?" Arch asked after a moment. There was a small shift in his father's tone. "He's not doing as well as you think," he said. "Got into trouble. Taxes." Arch let out a quiet breath. Things weren't always what they seemed. At one of his company offices, Jeff stood in front of a group of employees. The room was filled with quiet anticipation. "I've made some decisions," Jeff said. People leaned forward slightly. "We're improving wages," he continued. "Better benefits. More support for workers." Murmurs spread through the room. "And we're not replacing people with machines," he added. "If anyone has a problem with that, you can leave." The message was clear. For the first time, Jeff wasn't just managing a system. He was changing it. Back on the streets, Arch had taken a job as a delivery driver, just like in the vision he had once seen. But this time, something was different. He stood in front of a whiteboard at the workplace, holding a marker. Other workers glanced at him curiously. "I quit," Arch said simply, writing the words down. A few people exchanged looks. "That's it?" someone asked. Arch turned to them. "It doesn't have to be like this," he said. "We can do something better." There was a pause. Then one person stepped forward. I'm in. Another followed. Then another. Soon more voices joined in. What started as a single decision became something bigger, something shared. Later, Arch sat at a small table, reviewing notes and footage. He had picked up a camera again. This time, he wasn't just dreaming about being a documentarian. He was becoming one. His subject was clear: workers, struggles, real lives, stories that mattered. And through it all, Elena stood beside him once again. They talked, planned, and slowly rebuilt something that felt genuine. One evening, after sharing a simple meal together, Arch placed an extra taco on the table. Elena raised an eyebrow. "What's that for?" she asked. Arch smiled slightly. "For a friend," he said. There was no answer, but somehow it felt like enough. High above the city, or perhaps just somewhere unseen, Gabriel watched quietly. No longer uncertain, no longer lost, because now he understood. Sometimes helping someone didn't mean changing their life. Sometimes it meant helping them see that their life was already worth living.